Hi, this is E.T. With the arrival of electronic mass communication, beginning with commercial radio in 1920, listeners, and later watchers of television, developed a familiarity with the patterns of news delivery, a sense of how things take place behind the scenes. And when a brilliant young producer for the Mercury Theater recreated a fictional version that used those familiar patterns of delivery, many listeners believed what was not happening was, in fact, taking place. This is Orson Wells, one of the giants of radio, television, movies. He was a producer, director, and actor. On Sunday, October 30, 1938, Wells's Mercury Theater presented an adaptation of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. It was on CBS Radio. He's hoping to unseat NBC's top-rated Chase and Sanborn Hour. It starred ventriloquist Edgar Bergen and his dummy Charlie McCarthy, and it's during the most valuable time slot of the week. Orson Welles changed the time and location of H.G. Wells' novel from the turn of the century England to present day, 1938, New Jersey. And it's important to know that Americans at that time were listening to and believed radio news, and in 1938, that news was coming from Europe, and it centered on very aggressive actions of Hitler's Germany. And that news made American listeners very nervous. Well, in this context, Orson Welles presented his dramatization of a Martian invasion, replete with authentic-sounding announcers, scientists, government officials, and there were musical interludes between announcements of observations of explosions on Mars, a crashed object in New Jersey, deployment of American soldiers and the air forces, and Martian killer rays and deaths in the thousands, all heard and believed by many listeners to be the real thing. Now, to be fair to Orson Welles, he did announce at the show's beginning and several times during the drama that his theater production was presenting an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel. But it's a fact that many listeners tuned in late, having shifted the dial away from the Chase and Sanborn Hour on NBC. They shifted because the orchestra was playing and they wanted to hear Edgar Bergen and his dummy Charlie McCarthy. So they're shifting the dial and they stop on the CBS production. And it's in the middle of the Mars invasion broadcast. Needless to say, they stayed on CBS, and they believed it was a real invasion. Now you can imagine, after hearing believable interruptions of the music for interviews with scientists, for instance, the on-the-spot reports of a large object near Gates Mills, New Jersey, appearing to, here, you can hear.
I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Oh, Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, the gas spreading everywhere. It's coming this way now, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast.
Do you get the idea? Orson Welles had created, with all the attendant interludes, interruptions, confused and frightened men on the scene in New Jersey and at the News Network studio. It was all intended to convince listeners already susceptible to invasion news that our world was being invaded by Martians. The result of all this was thousands of people across the U.S. would call in to local radio stations. They called the police, newspapers. Some loaded up their cars and fled to somewhere safe. Now, there were some reports of early births and miscarriages and deaths, but none of this has been verified. There were lawsuits against CBS and Orson Wells, but the only money paid out was by Orson Wells. It was to a man who'd fled to Canada by bus. The ticket money was to be used to buy new shoes. Well, Wells was moved by this and sent him the cash, which I think went for a pair of size 10. And that's the story of a long ago event. But the message learned that we are always subject and vulnerable to untrue information remains true today in this age of communicable viruses, supposed enemies here and abroad with evil intentions and maybe weapons of mass destruction, where we may be getting something less than the truth, not just from fictional dramas, but from what's seen and heard and read from so-called reputable news sources. What do you think? Did you like this video? Tap the thumb up icon, type in your comments below, subscribe, and share the video. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control...